Hello to all of our Facebook followers and welcome to another evening of 30 Days, 30 Tips in our second series. And you would be correct if you wondered last night what happened to our 30 Days, 30 Tips. Raylene decided that she was going to do some self-care and boundaries and look after herself. She was very tired and took the night off. So here I am with you this evening at the special time of 11 p.m. And I would like to talk to you this evening about a two-part series tonight and tomorrow on self-care. Now, last series of 30 Days, 30 Tips, this time last year, I also spoke with Audit Express in relation to self-care. And we had the night off in Melbourne and we were just relaxing and enjoying ourselves and talking about self-care from that perspective. But tonight what I'd like to talk to you about is something a little bit different, and the impact that our boundaries, healthy or unhealthy, have on our ability to care for ourselves, no matter what role we play in the industry. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because I find that anybody who is in our industry is usually there, or not anybody, but the majority of people in our industry because they care and they want to make a difference, and they just have a caring nature that want to empower others to transform other people's lives, and in doing that we are what we call the helping profession. And so we often go out of our way to try and help others improve their lives and their circumstances, their opportunities, and what we perceive as disadvantage. And sometimes we will stop at nothing to make sure that the job that we believe is our purpose and our key message to make a difference and change those circumstances, we will really stop at nothing, including our own health and well-being, the well-being of our businesses, and we will often unconsciously jeopardise the compliance of our businesses just to try and make our clients happy. Now, I can talk about this from the perspective of RTO doctor and what that means as a consultant, and how often I will go out of my way to do whatever it takes for my clients, and I will often put myself at risk, both physically, emotionally, spiritually. But what I often see, and this is what I want to share with you this evening, is how often in your RTO have you taken that same approach where you have cared so much that you've jeopardized the compliance of your RTO. Now, we see it quite frequently, and it often forms the situation whereby an RTO will have tried everything that they can to try and appease a student or an employer or some other stakeholder of the RTO. And then that person has then gone on and lodged a complaint with the RTO. It didn't matter what they did, they just couldn't make this person happy. And if you remember back to the earlier days of our 30 Days, 30 Tips second series, we talked a little bit about the value of education and how that is all about perception and what one person values and what the other person also values, and how often they're not congruent with each other. There is a real disconnect between what you as an educator or a CEO or even a student perceives and what another stakeholder of the same qualification or course would perceive. And so where there is this disconnect where you as a professional give everything that you can to try and assist and support this particular student, often it comes or is felt as some form of exploitation. You can often feel as though the student or the employer is exploiting the situation, and it doesn't matter what you do, you just can't make them happy. And in the end, they just keep taking, and there's nothing more that you can give. And it starts to impact on your ability to maintain compliance, because not only are you trying to make them happy, but also in trying to make them happy, you're breaching your own policies and procedures, and often unconsciously. So, for example, we have had clients in the past who have tried very hard to try and identify the needs of students pre-enrollment, and they've identified the needs pre-enrollment of the student. They've tried to support those students and address those needs throughout the enrollment period, only to find that the needs of the student were actually not the needs that the student had. So, for example, and this is not the case that occurred. It's just an example of another case. But you could have, for example, an international student on a student visa who approaches you for enrollment in a course, and they say that it's because they want to get employment in a specific industry upon graduation. And you identify that they have no language literacy numeracy needs, they have no academic support needs, they've been studying in the country for 2 years already, they've already completed a Certificate 3 and a Certificate 4 qualification. Here they are in the diploma, and they've only got about six months left on their visa if they're lucky. And so you go through and you try and identify those students' needs, and you address those needs throughout the student's enrolment. Now, of course, the student, after a few weeks of being enrolled in the course, and now the commencement date has started, starts complaining because they don't like the course, and they don't like the teacher, or they don't like the resources, or they don't like the textbook. And so they say, oh, no, this is not for me. I don't want to work in this industry anymore. I want to try this. And so you try and enroll them in a different program that you offer just to satisfy their needs, only to find that the same situation repeats itself. Now, the underpinning need for this particular student might not actually be any particular industry that they want to work in. It's just that they're waiting for their visa to get extended, for example, or they've applied for a bridging visa, and they're only needing a very short-term visa to enable them to wait out that period. So it wouldn't matter what needs you identified in terms of academic support and language literacy, numeracy, and things like that, and how you try to address them, you wouldn't be able to address them, and the student will just keep going through and exploiting that situation until they've got their revised visa, and then they might cancel their enrolment, and they might make a complaint with you because they felt that they were entitled to a full refund because they didn't like the course that they enrolled in, or they thought this and they thought that. And you get the idea of where I'm going with this. So you have gone out of your way to try and address the needs of this particular student, and the student has played along and exploited the situation. They've then gone ahead and lodged a complaint with you, which you've tried to address because you don't want unhappy students at the end of the day, particularly in this current climate where everything is about the student experience. And any student complaint which leads to a potential ASQA complaint or a TAC complaint even, although you wouldn't have a TAC complaint in this scenario, but you can still have TAC complaints go forward. But any of these particular complaints going to a regulator could be detrimental to your RTO's compliance and registration. So what happens is the regulator will contact you via email and ask you to please explain what happened with this student. They will ask to see the pre-enrollment policy, they'll ask to see the training and assessment policy, they'll ask to see all the pre-enrollment materials, the student enrollment details, they'll ask to see the refund policy, the cancellation policy. And of course, once they start looking into all of those things, if you haven't followed those policies and procedures because you've been trying to support the student and give the student everything that they want and need, instead of following your own policies and procedures, because your boundaries were not healthy to begin with, they're now compromising the very compliance of your RTO. I hope that sort of makes sense in terms of what I'm trying to say. Because we don't have this ability to say no easily, and we just want to help people, often that gets in the way of what we know is the right thing to do to ensure compliance. And so I would really encourage you to, next time you are contemplating how you might identify a student's needs and how you might address those needs when the student is just unsatisfiable, or the employer is unsatisfiable, or the stakeholder, whoever they are, is unsatisfiable. Think about what your boundaries are in relation to that issue, and think about whether or not you have met the compliance requirements as far as you're concerned, and whether or not to deny that person what they're asking for is an unhealthy boundary for you, but also whether it could potentially lead to further non-compliance down the track. Because the last thing that we want to be doing is delivering training and assessment that is not consistent with our values. We don't want to be delivering training and assessment that is not meaningful to the learner either, or the employer, or any other stakeholder for that matter. But at the same time, we mustn't forget our values and what's important to us and why we're doing what we're doing in the first place. And if we ever compromise that because we're trying too hard to satisfy everybody, and bear in mind, we can't satisfy everybody. We can't make everybody happy. We will never make everybody happy. So as much as we try, it's important to go back to those boundaries that you have and the things that you value, the things that are important to you, the policies and procedures that you put in place in your organisation to support the goals, objectives and the vision of your training environment. And if you're doing that and you're following those policies and procedures, you're very mindful of your own boundaries and what you value and what's right and so forth, you shouldn't have too many problems in terms of unhealthy boundaries and letting other people influence your decision making so that it then becomes a negative consequence on your RTO's registration and compliance. I hope that that's been helpful for you this evening, and tomorrow we will have another discussion on self-care and the importance of that. I also want to bring to your attention that we have some very interesting and valuable tips coming up in partnership with Understand TAE, and Lauren Hollows will be joining us on her new venture in relation to trainer and assessor competency and currency, and how you can support your trainers to demonstrate competency and currency in accordance with the standards. And she will be running through some really important tips on how to do that. And we've also got another live feed coming up with an EVETMIS compliance provider on what are the things to look out for when you're looking for an EVETMIS compliance system or a learning management system. So we hope that you'll be able to join us in those future episodes later this week and early next week, and we look forward to seeing you. So good night for tonight and see you tomorrow. Bye for now.